Hello, everyone. Welcome to All Things College and Career, the podcast to turn to for all of your college and career planning needs. With your hosts, Meg Gary
and Bobby Ryan. You came to the right place to gather as much information as possible about college and careers before you make any big decisions.
We are so glad you are here to
learn before you leap, each week with us.
Today, we talk with Dr. Julie Cappel, a doctor of veterinary medicine, a practice owner and manager, and a veterinary life coach or mentor. And she's also a blogger and a podcast host of the Veterinary Life Coach Podcast with Dr. Julie Cappel.
Anyone researching what it's like to be a vet, or anyone that is a practicing doctor of veterinary medicine looking for a life coach or mentor, then this podcast is for you.
Julie tells you everything that you need to know to become a vet. We discuss what veterinary school is like, what a typical day is like as a vet, and the advantages and drawbacks of the career. She brings up things that most people would never even think of.
Yeah, she really does. We so enjoyed our conversation with Julie. She has a soothing, calm voice and an incredibly warm personality. She sincerely wants to help any veterinarians out there who are struggling in their field using her many, many years of experience, not to mention her skills as a life coach.
Absolutely. So this podcast is chock full of great tips and advice for anyone considering this field.
Yes, so without further ado, let's get to our conversation with Julie.
Let's do it. Hello, Dr. Julie Cappel. Welcome to All Things College and Career. Thanks so much for doing our podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I'm happy to be here.
Hey, hello, Julie. We are so excited to chat with you today. And since you are a 7 on the Enneagram, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, I am.
I'm pretty sure you're up for this.
Yes, I'm always up for new things. That's what sevens do, right?
That's exactly it.
We're always up for newness.
So, hey, where are we talking to you from today?
I am in Michigan, in Sterling Heights, near Detroit.
Awesome.
And my practice is in Warren, so it's close by here. And I've been here a lot of years. So
a lot of years. It's definitely your
Michigan.
Home. Yep. That's great. It's a great state. So I know you wear a few hats these days as a podcaster, a vet life coach, a blogger, to name a few. But to narrow down this next question, could you share with our listeners 3 things you love about being a veterinarian and owner of Woods Veterinary Hospital?
Yeah, the thing I love most about being a veterinarian is just, I think, the variety, because you know, I'm one of those people that likes to do a lot of different things. And when you're a veterinarian, you just never know what's going to come in the door. So that's really exciting. And
you have all different species, right? You'd have exotic.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm an exotic pet veterinarian. So I see a lot of birds and I see lizards. And
so when you talk about variety, you don't mean different types of dogs and cats.
Well, yeah,
that, but I mean, not just that.
Sure. Absolutely.
Right,
yeah. So one of my primary things that I do is see birds. And so I'm one of the few people in our area that do that. So that makes my job even more of a variety.
Yeah.
And that's so interesting.
Yeah. The other thing I really love about it is just the animals and the people, because that makes it truly exciting. Because, you know, if you deal with a lot of people or you work with the public at all, that can be challenging, but also very interesting because you meet a lot of really variety of personalities.
Sure.
And that can be good or bad.
Right. Yeah. Keep showing your toes, but
Exactly. Yeah. So that makes it challenging, but that's always fun.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite kind of bird or?
Well, my own personal bird is a Quaker parrot, and they're just this little green bird, but they're very, very loud. And I really do love them because they have these really strong personalities and they're very cage protective. So they usually will bite everybody in sight, but they're kind of little comedians. So I do love them, but it's mostly parrots that I see. So I see a lot of parrots and some canaries and finches and things like that. But
do you see any wild birds at all? Or
yeah, we do. Periodically we do. We have a few clients that have wild birds as pets. And so I see a few robins and sparrows and those kind of birds that people have raised from babies and we're not able to release. And so we see those. But I don't routinely see wild birds. It's mostly pets.
Right. And so what was that third thing you were going to just say?
Oh, the third thing that I love about my job?
Yeah.
I think what's really interesting about being a veterinarian is you never you never know everything. And with medicine, it's always changing and always growing. And so almost on a weekly basis, I'm learning something that I didn't know the day before. And sometimes it's by design. I learned something because I read it in a journal or I to a continuing education speech or something like that, and I learned something. And sometimes it's just by necessity. If something comes in that I've never seen before, and sometimes you just have to be creative and try to figure out a way to fix something that's new to you. And that's a really interesting part of our work, is just the challenge of the change and the variety and challenging your brain to do things it hasn't done before.
Yeah, it keeps your brain young.
Keeps your
it absolutely
thinking.
does.
I love that.
It's good.
Yeah.
Well, those are 3 very good reasons. And we can see that you've made a little or added a little something to your repertoire, and you are now a life coach. Do you specifically coach other veterinarians or just a general life coach? Or
Well, I am a general life coach. I'm certified as just a general life coach, but most of the people that I coach are in the veterinary field. And that's kind of why I got into it, because the job is so challenging. And a lot of the younger veterinarians that are getting into it now are struggling a little bit with our career. And so I really saw a need that people needed help. And because I've been doing this for a long time and I'm really passionate about it, and I've worn a lot of hats in the veterinary field, I thought it would be a perfect thing for me to add in the coaching. And I've always
feel like
loved
you have
leadership.
something to offer that way?
Absolutely, yeah, because I've raised kids doing this job. I've been a business owner. I've had a lot of experience in life, and so that perfectly bridges over into being a life coach, and I really enjoy it. I started out just getting some coaching myself and studying that whole field, and then I just thought, I'm just going to do this because I really think there's a need for it in our profession, and that's how I got started.
So what is it that's making it so difficult for young veterinarians coming out?
Yeah.
Is it fewer jobs or just
No,
tougher?
actually, there's a lot of jobs. Right now, with the way the economy is, veterinarians are really needed. There are a lot of spots for veterinarians. But I think what a lot of young veterinarians didn't understand when they got in, or they're just struggling with at this point, is the fact that your life is a little bit wrapped around your job. And so that work-life balance thing is sometimes a little bit challenging. And instead of balance, I like to call it harmony, because, people get a job and they end up working 40 or 50 hours a week, and they didn't expect that. And also they didn't expect the level of, I don't know if I would call it guilt, or just the challenge that becoming a vet or being a vet poses this unique challenge that people will ask you questions when you're not at work. So anywhere you go, any party you go to, any gathering, any dinner, as soon as somebody finds out you're a veterinarian, right away they're like, well, I have a dog, and they start asking you questions. And so I think sometimes if people aren't prepared for that,
there's no mental break or downtime.
That can be tricky. Yeah.
It's tricky, and it's tricky to draw boundaries, because then they feel like they're not compassionate, and there's this well of compassion that we have to put out constantly. And I think that sometimes gets tiring if people don't take care of themselves. And I think that's where the challenge lies.
And if you're at work 40, 50, 60 hours a week, when you're off, you need to just kind of disassociate from that endless compassion, because, you have to start looking out for yourself a little bit in your off hours, I'm sure.
Yourself and your family.
Yeah,
and,
your family,
your
or whatever else you have
exercise
going on. Sure.
Yeah. So I think that's why it gets really challenging for some people.
I think that's much like medical doctors.
Oh, absolutely.
Same thing. I mean, we have 2 in our family, and sure, they get hit up. We'll be at dinner and somebody will come over and be like, hey,
for free advice.
Yeah.
Well,
so
it's just...
It happens all the time. And I think instead of just taking that as it comes, sometimes veterinarians take it so seriously that it becomes this big burden on them. And so my job as a life coach now is to try to help them deal with that and protect themselves and protect their brain, so they don't become over compassionate and then burn themselves out.
Yeah, exactly. You're like a mentor.
Right. We
absolutely.
interviewed a clinical psychologist psychologist earlier on in our podcast. If anyone wants to go back and listen to that, it's Julie Schneider. I can't remember the episode number, but
it was in the single digits, but it was a while ago. But yeah,
she did mention a similar experience as a clinical psychologist, that you kind of have to learn how to leave the job behind in order to be, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but in order to be the best doctor when you're on duty, you have to let it go at some points too.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a challenge because most veterinarians get into this field because they're very passionate about animals, but we can't always help all the animals because the animals come with people attached, and then those people get to make the decisions. So it's not always up to us, and they're not always the best decisions in our minds. Right. So it's very hard to let go. It's a difficult balancing act, but that's why I wanted to do the coaching thing, because I think that that's a skill that you can learn, and if you have somebody that understands, they can help you learn that skill of self-preservation.
Sure. And with all your years of experience, you're the perfect person for that. And, listening to you explain your experience as a life coach, it reminds me of the podcast we did recently with admin Michael Scharf. They have a podcast as well called Mentoring for the Modern Musician. And they're basically doing the same thing for musicians as you are for veterinarians.
They're seasoned vets, pros, and they just have so much to offer to young musicians starting out. And
I'll have to listen to that because my kids are musicians.
It's
definitely.
Ironically, yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
They have such amazing advice. It's just awesome.
And
it's
really, just
really
like
good.
your podcast, where a lot of the advice is transferable to just about any career in many aspects of your life. But yeah, definitely if you have your children or anyone you know that are musicians, it's definitely a place to go.
Yeah, I'll definitely listen to that. Yeah, that sounds really interesting.
But it is encouraging to hear you say that the jobs for veterinarians, they're plentiful. So that's good for anybody considering this field.
Yeah, right now they are. They're very plentiful, actually. And for veterinary technicians as well. Everybody's always looking for more help right now. So that's always a good thing.
I just wonder why. Is it fewer people graduating with that degree, or is it because more people have pets? Or, I mean, what do you think drives the demand?
There's a limit on how many veterinarians can graduate because there's a limited amount of veterinary schools in the United States.
True.
And so it's a small amount, but there's more and more veterinary hospitals opening up, and there's more and more people with pets. And people are demanding higher quality care for those pets. They're treating them more like children than they did, 20 or 30 years ago.
I totally agree. I think about when we were growing up.
I know what you're going to say.
Our dogs didn't go to the vets too often, trust me.
Yeah. And my dad was like, well, I'm going to take him out back and shoot him, that kind of thing. He never did. He never, ever did.
He never did.
He was really
He had a heart of gold. It was just a little bit of a threat. So we would step up and help out.
Right. Yeah. He wanted you to help take care of him. That's what he said. Yeah, but that's definitely changed.
It has.
There's
so
many.
That's a great explanation.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. And there's pets that are, support animals for their people, and so they're just more important. And so I think that's why there's a higher demand. And a lot of veterinarians are trying to work part-time a little bit more than they used to, and the quality of life issues make it a little bit harder to keep those positions filled.
Sure, that makes sense too. So, okay, we know you went to school a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
2 or 3.
You can tell people. I've been out of school for 31 years. I graduated
and that's
from Michigan
that's what
State
makes you
in
so seasoned. Yeah.
Right. And that's why you can be a life coach and mentor.
Exactly.
So, but I'm sure Michigan has changed a lot over the years, but what would you give our listeners for a couple of takeaways from going to school there?
Well, Michigan State is where I went, and you can't call it Michigan because Michigan.
I'm sorry.
University of Michigan is different than Michigan State University.
Not the same school.
Yeah. And the people that live in Michigan will hold you to that. So anyway.
I'm going to edit that
out. No, that's fine. My son went to University of Michigan, but I went to Michigan State University.
Yes.
Okay.
So anyway, Yeah,
Yep.
Michigan State. And I still work with them a lot. I'm a mentor for their veterinary school right now. I was just
Oh,
up there
so
a couple weeks ago. So I'm pretty
You're in
involved
touch.
with this school, in the Michigan Veterinary Medical Association. But from what I know of Michigan State School at this point, they usually take about 100 students a year is how many they'll actually take into the program. And I'm not sure how many applications they have each year, but it could be up to, I think, 2,000 or 3,000.
Oh my
And
gosh.
now the way they do it, not back when I applied, but now they have a thing called the Veterinary Medical College Application Service. And so that's kind of a national thing. So when people are trying to get into veterinary school, they apply through that service and they can apply to multiple schools at the same time.
Nice.
Is how I understand
Kind of like the
it.
Common App
Nice.
for undergrad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And so they have an application, they have letters
So
of
they have
recommendation.
many more applications probably because of that process, though, is
Yeah,
what you're
yeah.
trying to get at. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's how it works now. And of
Yeah.
course, they have prerequisites before you can apply. And that's all the undergrad things that they do. So I don't know how much detail you want me to go into, but
Maybe just a couple sentences about how much classroom work and then how much hands-on work.
It's a 4-year
during the time.
program, right? Veterinary
Yeah.
school.
Yeah, the
Yep.
actual veterinary school is 4 years. So it's
Mm-hmm.
after you do your undergrad, you go to veterinary school for 4 years. And usually it's 3 years in the classroom and one to 1.5 years in what they call clinics. So after you've gone to about 2.5 years of all the school work in the first 2.5 or almost 3 years of veterinary school, then they put you into clinics and then you do rotations through the different departments. So you'll spend a couple of weeks in dermatology and a couple of weeks in surgery, and you'll spend large animal because veterinarians have to learn everything. They don't just learn
Right.
small
Yeah,
or
that's
large.
Right.
so much to learn. It's
Yeah,
wow.
they're
Yes.
getting a little bit more track oriented now. So
Are
if you want
they?
to go into small animal, they're
You
trying
can
to get
spend
that.
some additional time in that area. Or
Absolutely. Yeah. When I went, you had to do everything. You had to learn sheep and pigs, and you still do, but they're kind of trying to track it a little bit better. So if you want to do all large animal, they kind of steer you
right,
more in that
probably some
direction.
vets just want to do farm animals, and some
Yes.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I
Farm
that's
animals, horses,
right.
small
Yeah.
animal. There's a lot of different things that you can do. But basically, you'll be in clinics for I think it's a year and a half now. And that's kind of the end of your schooling.
Is there a residency involved at all? Or
Well, when you graduate with your 4 years of vet school, you're a veterinarian and you can practice. But they also have residencies and internships that you can go into and then specialize.
Okay.
So in veterinary medicine, there's people that specialize in just cardiology or just dermatology. And they do residencies and internships and things like that. But if you want to just be a general practitioner after your 4 years of veterinary school, then you can practice.
Is there a major exam you have to take at the end and pass?
Yes.
Or, Yes. Okay.
There's boards. Yep. You have to take boards, which is a national test. It's kind of like an all-day test that you take, or like 6 hours or something. It's ridiculously long and
Ouch.
painful.
And hard.
ouch.
And hard, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, you do
Yeah.
have to pass boards. In most states, you have to also pass a state board exam.
Right.
Which, from what we understand, those are generally a little less painful, more like state
Yes.
laws. Yeah.
So I haven't had to do that in a long time, but
Yeah,
when I do
thankfully.
remember
Goodness.
it was definitely a difficult thing. But
Yeah,
I think
sure.
once you go through veterinary school, most people do pass. It's not something that they have a high failure
They
rate
prepare
of,
you
but-
well.
Right. And
Yeah.
you can always retake it. I think you can retake it 2 or 3 times in order to pass.
Right. And you can probably get some work, maybe working as an assistant or associate
Sure.
until you pass, right? So you're not
Yeah.
unemployed completely.
Yeah, most people pass during their final year. Like I think I passed in December, but I didn't graduate until May.
Oh,
Right.
interesting. That must have been the best 6 months after you passed.
Well, you
and-
get, yeah,
Well, and that's why we
right.
did it,
Yeah.
because we thought, well, if we take it in December and we fail, we can always take it again in May.
Absolutely.
Or June.
Sure.
Yeah.
But if you take it early and you pass, then you're
Good
golden.
to have that
Yeah.
option. So, do you have to maintain continuing education credits throughout? Or
Yes.
You do.
Yeah, Michigan just this past year, finally, after years and years and years of fighting, got continuing education requirements to maintain your license. But for years, we didn't have any requirements, but most states did. And now Michigan does. So we have to have, I think it's 45 hours in a 3-year period.
Okay.
Maybe it's 2 years. I can't recall
So
exactly.
it's a
but,
way to keep you up to
yes, we
date
do.
and current and fresh. But it sounds like you're learning every day from your description anyway.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah. It's an ever-changing thing, like any other medical profession. Everything's always changing and growing, and new drugs come out all the time.
Oh, I bet. I cannot imagine
there's
keeping track of all of that. Wow.
Yeah, you can always, and that's why we have specialists, and I can always call specialists if I'm having a struggle with something and get help.
Oh,
so
that's
veterinarians
good.
are pretty friendly individuals, so we all help each other.
Yeah, I think by nature, the field you chose.
Yeah, veterinarians are amazing people.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to say that about myself because it doesn't sound very modest, but veterinarians are just...
You sound pretty amazing to us,
We'll
Julie.
say it for you.
Great people. Yeah, I love that. So I'm all for that.
Good. You're in the right field then for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. So speaking of your field, can you talk to us about what it's like to be a veterinarian and what your day is like? What's a typical day for you?
In my hospital, because I'm in a small animal hospital, we basically have hours like from 8 to 7, 8 to 6, depending on the day. So my day is I get there about 8:30 or 9 because I start seeing clients at 9. And then we have clients scheduled from like 9 to 1, and it's anywhere from 20 to 40-minute appointments. So the routine appointments like vaccines and things like that will just be 20 minutes. And then if somebody's sick, they'll have a 40-minute slot. So basically what I do is my technicians will go in, they'll get histories for me, they'll do temperatures and weigh pets and things like that. And then they'll come out, write up the history and tell me what's going on. And then I go in and talk to the client and examine the pet and then basically decide what needs to be done. And then we can do in the office. So it's a little bit different than human medicine because we do everything. So if the pet that I'm examining needs x-rays, then my technicians will take x-rays for me and they'll draw blood work and they can run blood work in-house. And so we can do the whole workup while the pet is in our office, unless they need some very specialized testing. Sometimes we'll refer them to specialists.
Yeah, there's no going to the hospital or lab and come back. We'll call you when we get there. You can do it right on the spot.
Right.
That's kind of nice.
Right.
Yeah.
So we do everything and then we can, see what's wrong with that pet, talk to the client about making decisions based on treatment, and then send the pet home. So my day will consist of examining pets. Sometimes I get to see puppies and just, examine them and give them their vaccines and,
so
cuddle.
fun.
And that's really fun.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you have sick pets and that's not so fun. And
Yeah. Is it hard to put pets down or?
It is, it really is, but it's kind of one of those necessary things because there is suffering.
Suffering. Yeah.
And the way I see it is we can alleviate that suffering, which a lot of times in human medicine can't be done.
Right.
And so it's something that you struggle with at the beginning, but I think if you can wrap your mind around the part of the job that is, we're basically helping that pet and we're helping those people make the decision, number one, if it's the right thing to do, and then number two, navigate those emotions.
Yeah, it is helpful when the vet kind of makes a decision or recommends it, because I think that's always so hard for the owners.
Yeah, you don't ever take that decision away from the client because they're the one that's attached to that pet and has those strong emotions.
Exactly.
So they have to be on board.
Oh, for sure.
But you can actually help them go through the grieving process and make it easier for them and make the whole thing easier for them. And that's a big part of our job. And so if you can wrap your head around that being a good thing rather than a horrible thing, which I don't think it's horrible. I think it's a real privilege to be in that room. I see the love between the pet and the client, and it's just a beautiful thing sometimes.
Yeah.
So it can be a really good thing, even though sometimes it's hard on veterinarians to do every day. But it is a big part of our job.
Yeah. Do you feel like the animals don't suffer during that process? It seems very peaceful.
Not if you do it right. Yeah, you have to do it right.
You have to do it right.
There's a way to do it so the pet doesn't really know what's going on and they're gently tranquilized and gently, let go. And so there is the right way to do it. And most of the time, if it's done in a right way and it's not rushed and time is taken, then it goes very easily for everyone.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And that's kind of the goal. That's what we want. But that's something that we do. It's not every day. It can be every day, but it's not always every day. And I think most veterinarians, if they have a healthy respect for that thing that we do, they can do it and not necessarily feel good about it, but feel like they're doing something useful for that person and that pet. because a lot of times those pets are suffering and shouldn't be made to suffer through that. So that's part of our day. And then sometimes I have surgeries, like today was my surgery day. So on a surgery day, I'll go in and my technicians will help me examine the pets that are there for surgery. And then we'll decide what we're going to use for anesthesia. We'll go through that process. The technicians will prep the pets and put IV catheters in them and get them ready for the surgery. And then I'll scrub and gown and everything and get ready for the surgery, and then go in and perform the surgery, basically tell the technicians what kind of medications to give and all the monitors. And then
you're an anesthesiologist as well.
yeah.
Basically,
You have to do all that.
Yeah,
and then,
that's amazing.
call the clients.
Yeah.
So today I did a cystotomy, which is a bladder surgery where you take out a stone. So I got this little stone prize.
Oh, wow.
I call it prizes when I get to take something out.
Oh,
Right.
that must have so
this
relieved to
little dog
have.
had a big bladder stone.
Oh, ouch.
So we took that out.
Oh,
And then she had to have her teeth cleaned. So we did a dental on her. And, so that's part of our day as
how
well.
many surgeries
And
will you
then-
generally do?
Anywhere from 2 to 4, depending on the day.
Yeah.
Depending on how busy we are, we'll do a couple of dentals and a couple of surgeries. If they're easy surgeries, if they're like neuters or spays, those are a little bit shorter procedures than like the cystotomy that I did today was a little longer, although hers wasn't too bad because she was a little dog and it was only 1 stone.
What would you say was a most challenging surgery you've had to perform?
I think the hardest ones for me are birds, because birds are super sensitive to
tiny.
anesthesia
Oh,
and they're so tiny.
Yeah.
I've had to
Yeah.
spay little birds, take out their uterus, and
Wow.
that's really, really hard
Can
because everything's so
imagine.
small and you have to be so careful because they can't lose a lot of blood.
wow.
That does sound really
I had
tricky.
to,
Goodness.
not too
Yeah.
long ago, I had a turtle that had prolapsed. I wrote a blog about that because it was kind of interesting, and I had
Wow.
to anesthetize this box turtle and try to work on that, which box turtles are really hard to work on because they have this shell that turns into a box and you can't get in there.
Oh
They just
my-
suck
Oh my
everything
goodness.
in. And
How do you get
Yeah.
in there?
Yeah,
I didn't
that's
even think
tough.
about that. Right. It covers
Yeah, so
their belly and
that's-
everything. Yeah.
That's challenging. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would say birds are probably the hardest things. But
yeah.
we take foreign bodies out of dogs. One of my veterinarians this week took out a sock out of a dog's stomach.
Oh my
and-
gosh.
Of course,
Dogs will
they
eat
eat
anything.
stupid things.
They do.
Yeah.
They're crazy.
Dogs aren't very bright.
No.
sometimes.
What are you doing with that sock?
Yeah.
Well, I was
I
just
love-
chewing on it and it
was
went
probably
down.
a really
Yeah,
dirty,
I love
sweaty,
dogs.
smelly one too.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
Exactly.
Of course.
Yeah. Dogs are kind of gross sometimes, but it makes it
they do.
interesting.
Yeah, I know. They love to roll in dead animals
Oh,
and
I
everything
know.
else.
We like to ask professionals what the advantages and drawbacks are of their profession. And I was listening to one of your podcasts, and I want to get into talking about your podcast a little bit more.
Okay.
But something you mentioned that is unique to medical providers, so to speak, is in your situation, you're constantly put in the situation of having to talk about money.
Yes.
Is that something
Yeah,
you
that's
would
tough.
say
Consider a
a
drawback.
drawback
yeah.
of your profession?
Yeah, I absolutely would, because a lot of people don't have insurance for their pets. So it's a little different than human medicine, and clients don't always understand that. And, veterinarians charge so much less and get paid so much less than doctors, the human
Absolutely,
doctors.
yeah.
And we have the same basic training. And I don't think people always understand that. And so the whole money discussion can get really uncomfortable because clients get angry at us. Like it's our fault that they have to pay. And it isn't, because we have businesses to run and people to pay and
Sure.
overhead. And
Of course.
we basically have to do the same things that your human hospital has to do at, an eighth of the budget.
Right.
And
Right.
so, it gets very uncomfortable because sometimes people get angry about it if they don't have the finances to afford some of the things that we
Yeah.
recommend. Sometimes they'll try to blame us and ask us to do it for free,
Wow.
which is kind of impossible. If we tried to do everything for free, we would not have a business. And
Right.
Of course
we would,
not.
we
right.
would go out of business. So that's one of the big drawbacks, is that whole money discussion and having to kind of bargain for what's right for the pet, because we know what's right for the pet. And we can say, this pet needs an ultrasound and x-rays and blood work and urinalysis and all these things to get a proper diagnosis.
Right.
And the client will say, I only have $200.
Right.
And
then what do you
we're
do?
really stuck.
You're stuck because
we have to guess what's wrong with them. We have to do,
Yeah.
kind of a half treatment that we really didn't want to do. We have to try our best. And that's a lot of pressure.
That is.
That puts a lot of pressure on veterinarians.
And you have to say to them, like, okay, but I'm going to be guessing here.
Yes. And sometimes people are
these
very
tests.
appreciative that we work within their budget, and they're very caring, and they understand. And then other people that don't understand and get angry can be very rude and ugly and give us bad reviews on the internet. And that's one of the things that's so hard on veterinarians, is because then we have to read what horrible people we are because we're trying to charge for our services.
Right.
And that's definitely a drawback.
Yeah, for sure.
It's difficult. There's not a lot we can do. We encourage people to try to get insurance on their pets, but some people can't afford it.
Is the insurance any good?
Well, some of it is, yeah. It depends on the policy that you get, but it's good for catastrophic things sometimes, like if your pet gets cancer, or if they eat a sock and you have a $3,000 surgery you need to pay for.
Yeah.
So it can be helpful in those cases, or if you have a pet that's got like chronic skin problems or allergies or something. But I always tell people when they get pets, I said, if you could just start a little savings account, on the side, that's like your pet fund, and just put a little bit of money in there every paycheck, then when something big does happen, you might be able to afford it.
Yeah.
And that would help your veterinarian, and that would help you not to get into trouble. Or if you have a credit card that's just for emergencies that you could just use for your pet or something.
And that's the thing, though, when people buy animals, they just look at the cost of the animal, or pick one up from the shelter. But owning an animal is expensive. And anybody that has ever owned one knows.
Right.
So you can't just pick one up if you don't really have the ability to care for it.
Right.
Yeah. And I see that a lot with my bird practice, because people will buy a little budgie as a pet, and they'll pay like $20 or $25 for it. And then when they bring it in, and I'm telling them they need to pay me $100 to do whatever I need to do, they look at me like I'm crazy. And that's what it costs. So we went to school. We spent a lot of money to go to school.
Oh, I know.
So not only do you have to pay for my experience and my expertise, but you also have to pay for the blood work and the medicine and
the building and the malpractice and
your
everything
time
else.
And the lights. Absolutely. Yeah,
the list goes on.
Exactly.
And people do forget that, for sure.
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge that we experience a lot.
What would you say are the biggest advantages?
I think one of the bigger advantages that I don't think we touched on is there's such a variety of opportunities in this profession that you can pretty much dictate what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And that's becoming even broader, because there's people that just do home practice and they just do house calls. And there's people that do rehab, and that's all they do in their practice. And because a lot of veterinarians are now working part-time, a lot of people that want to be parents can say, well, I'm only going to work 2 days a week as a relief vet. And so I'll only work 2 days a week.
It provides a lot of flexibility. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And for me, when I had children, I bought my practice. One of the main reasons I wanted to be the owner is so if my kids had something going on at school, I could say, well, I'm not going to work this afternoon. I have to leave.
Right.
Because I got to go do my kids' school thing. And that worked beautifully for me. I mean, I still worked a lot of hours, and my kids had to come to work with me sometimes on the weekends, but it allowed me that flexibility to make sure that I was always there when my kids needed me. And that worked out great for me. So I think that's an advantage too.
Definitely, for sure.
Yeah.
Advantage.
So you're saying today's veterinarians have a lot of flexibility in their schedule and what they specialize in. And I didn't even think about how you could just do rehabilitation or visit people's animals at home.
Specialize.
And it's really cool.
Yeah. And a lot of vets first getting out of school don't realize that, because they've got this heavy debt burden, and they're like, well, I have to work as many hours as I can because I got to pay back the school debt.
Yeah, that's sure.
But I think if you step back a little bit from that and say, but I can be flexible. I could work just emergencies at night. I could work at an emergency clinic. I could just work during the day. I could work part-time at the emergency clinic and work 2 nights a week and 2 days a week at a day practice. I mean, there are a lot of things that you can do to make your life better.
So I want to ask you a little bit about your podcast. It's called the Veterinary Life Coach Podcast with Dr. Julie Cappel. And
yes, it is.
Bobby and I have listened to several of the episodes, and you do a wonderful job.
Thank you so much.
You have a very soothing
you do.
voice. So
I always feel relaxed listening.
I do too.
Yeah, and
really?
Well,
that's funny.
Meg and I, we haven't talked about that, but I have that same feeling. I feel
that's
very
funny
calm.
because my kids are kind of critiquing me all the time, because my
they're
kids
your
are
best critics.
Well, they're adults, so I call them kids, but they're actually in their 20s.
Right.
So of course they know all things podcast. And
Of
so
course.
when I
They're very
decided
hip.
I wanted to do this, they were like, okay, Mom, and they had me listen to other podcasts. And so a lot of times they'll critique me. My son will say, Mom, on this last podcast, you talked too slow. And on this one, you sounded like you were reading. And,
that's
so
funny.
they keep giving me tips.
That's
and my
good.
daughter's done a few podcasts with me.
Oh, wow. We've heard Bridget.
Yes.
She's really good. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. She's
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm learning. It's new. I've only been doing it since February.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a pretty new thing for me, but I'm really enjoying it. And I hope I'm getting good information out there for people to listen to and how to think about their life.
Absolutely. I would recommend it to anybody, but particularly to any vets out there, because she does.
Great,
She gets
thank you.
into all the challenges for veterinarians today. You talk about money, relationships, work harmony, finding purpose, people pleasing, setting boundaries, not quitting, work-life balance, conflict, student loan debt, and how it impacts vets or just life in general. So that's some great topics. And I think Bobby and I particularly enjoyed listening to the one with your daughter, Bridget.
Was it on the Enneagram?
Yeah,
Is that the
and
one you
then-
listened to?
Yeah. That's why I said you're a 7.
Yeah.
We both did the Enneagram and Myers-Briggs.
Right. Which,
Yes, I love Myers-Briggs too. I love all that
Yeah.
stuff, but my daughter's particularly interested in that. And she's a 1, so she's very much a detailer.
Mhm.
And so she really helps me get to the details. So yeah, I've really enjoyed doing those because I think all that personality stuff, it just teaches you more about yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you can learn more about yourself, you're going to be a better human and then also better to other people.
Sure. And also understanding the other people in your life and their personality traits and,
Yeah,
and
and
how
I
you
love
can
that
better
too.
relate to
Right.
them. And
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right, which that was some of the most beneficial
Yeah.
things Bridget dove into. But yeah, it's funny because I've obviously in my profession have studied a lot of this stuff, and I thought Bridget provided one of the best
really?
explanations I've heard. So
Excellent. Good.
anybody,
Yeah, she studies it.
yeah,
She's really
absolutely.
into it. That's
So
why I
I
had
would
her do it with me because I knew that
yeah.
if I had her, it would go well. And she always teaches me something about it. Every time we get ready for a podcast, I learn things. So yeah. It's fun. And we're going to do more of that.
I bet.
We're probably going to do another Enneagram for sure. And we definitely want to get more into Myers-Briggs because there's so much to that. And then I love DISC. To me, DISC is super easy. So I love that for a business thing. I think that that works well in veterinary hospitals and businesses. So I like DISC.
I would recommend anybody before you listen to one of these podcasts to go ahead and find these online and take the assessment before you listen.
Yes,
It will make it a lot
it only
more
takes a few
interesting.
minutes.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Pretty simple to do.
Yeah.
And then once you start reading and you read the descriptions on some of the websites, you'll recognize yourself. And you won't always like it, which is really interesting.
No,
like,
it's a hard things to face.
Yeah, hard pill to swallow when your personality says things. The thing that always gets me is scattered because I don't feel like I'm a scattered person. But when I hear that word, I'm like, well, yeah, I guess sometimes I kind of am scattered. I like to go all over the place. And I hear it on the podcast as sometimes I'll get on a tangent and then I'll be like, oh, I was talking about this and I'll have to steer myself back. So I definitely have to accept that about myself, that I can be a little bit all over the place. Yeah.
That's so funny. But you also have a blog.
I do.
So could you tell us a bit about that?
Well, I started the blog probably almost 2 years ago now. I was blogging for my hospital, which I was doing for about 5 years and just putting little stories on our hospital blog. And then when I started doing the coaching, the life coaching and leadership coaching thing, I thought, I really need to start a blog. And I never thought I was a very good writer. My whole life, my story was, I don't know how to write. I'm not good at that. I wasn't good in English, that kind of thing. That was my brain story that I told myself. And so I just decided that I was going to force myself to start writing. And I thought the easiest way to do that would be to commit to a blog. So I promised myself that every Sunday night before midnight, I was going to put out this blog, and I wanted to do it for veterinarians around this life coaching thing. So I started this life coach blog, and it's just called The Veterinary Life with Dr. Cappel. And I just put it on Blogger because I really didn't know what else to do with it. And I just started writing. And so every Sunday, as painful as it was, I just put out a story. And I try to talk about things that happened to me that week, or, just come up with a random story and then relate it to some sort of life lesson and I'll usually put some kind of quote in there from somebody that I like. And I do a lot of Rocky quotes because I'm a big Rocky fan, which is kind of silly, but
it's a great movie.
Oh, for sure.
It's probably therapeutic to you as well, being able to write all that down and something about your week and relating it to an experience and then some positive.
Yeah, and I just want other veterinarians to read it and know that they're not alone and that we all struggle with these things and that we can learn lessons and we can do better and we can be better and we can think better. And that's kind of what the whole coaching thing is about, is training your brain to think in a different way so you can overcome some of your obstacles and understanding that it's normal. It's normal to have bad. You know, half of your life's going to be hard and that's okay. And that's part of the journey. So that was kind of where the blog came from. And then once I got the blog going and I felt pretty good about that, I started publishing in some of the veterinary journals and magazines, and the Michigan Veterinary Medical Association published a few of my stories.
That's nice.
And then I started the podcast. So, and getting my life coaching business going. I've been doing that for a couple of years and coaching veterinarians. And so, yeah, it's still pretty young, but I'm working on it.
We will include all those links in the show notes for anybody that would like to check out Julie's blog or her podcast or her website or the Woods Vet Hospital.
Yeah, that's great.
For life coaching, can you do it over the phone? So
yes. Most of the time it is done over the phone. Usually we do like a Zoom so we can see each other.
Yeah.
Which is really nice because it's nice to be able to see who you're talking to. And so that's how I usually do it.
Yeah.
But I've done it in person. Last year at the Michigan Veterinary Conference, I went and I offered free life coaching to the vets that were there. And so we did some in-person stuff with different people. And so I've done it in person. I've done it just over the phone if people don't like me to look at their face, you know, for whatever reason. And, you know, and you can basically do it in short sections. And then I have a lot of like handouts and questionnaires and things that I could send to people if they want to do some work on their own, because a lot of this is self-work. You know, it's working on yourself to be better and have a better life. And that's what kind of the whole life coaching idea is about.
Right. And they can find all that information on your website?
Yes. Yep. They can go to my website. They can send me an email. I do I call it weekly words. Every week I send people emails. It's kind of like a short words of encouragement that I send out every week. They can sign up for that on my website, and they can always email me if they have questions or they want to get a hold of me for coaching or they just want to talk to me. I'm always open.
And we definitely will have all that in the show notes. But do you want to just say right now what your website is?
My website is juliecappel.com.
Okay.
So it's pretty simple.
Really simple.
And it also, if you search on veterinarylifecoach.com, that'll also go to the same website.
Okay, perfect.
And I have a Facebook page that's called The Veterinary Life with Dr. Julie Cappel. So you can join the Facebook group. And I usually post all my blogs there every week.
Okay.
And my podcast. So
perfect. Yeah. So we will definitely have that in the show notes for anybody that's not able to write that down right now.
Yeah, it's pretty simple
to remember all that too.
If you just Google, everything pops up.
Sure.
Google is amazing.
It certainly is.
Well, Julie, it is now time for our rapid fire questions. So much fun. But I just wanted to ask you first, is there anything you wanted to add about being a veterinarian or life coaching or your podcast before we get on to those rapid fire questions?
I guess the only thing I would add is if there's any veterinarians or people that want to be veterinarians out there that are either struggling with the decision to go to vet school and the debt, or just if they're already veterinarians or veterinary technicians and they're struggling, just to make sure that they know that there are people out there that can help with that and that they ask for help. And it doesn't necessarily have to be me, but we're all friendly people and we all want to help each other. And I just want everyone to know that we're out there. So nobody's home alone struggling with these things.
Right, because it's a very specific thing. Not everybody can help them make that decision. So yeah, Julie's definitely available if you need help through that process.
Yeah, career coaching.
Don't hesitate.
Sure.
Don't
Absolutely.
hesitate.
Yep. I'm always happy to talk. I'm a big talker, so I like to talk. So I'm cool with that.
All right.
All right. Well, hey, that kind of leads into my first question.
Okay.
What are 3 words you would use to describe yourself? After you said I'm a big talker, I would
I guess I would say outgoing, confident, and fun.
There you go.
That's a 7, right?
Yeah, that's a 7. I was just going to say, we can just look up a 7 and
that's
see what we got.
Super hard. That's a super hard question, though, when you ask somebody to pick 3 words that describe
it.
It
is. It is a super hard question.
Yeah.
I agree. Okay. I know you're doing a lot of things, but if you had a free week to do anything you wanted to do, what would you do with that time?
Oh, well, I really enjoy biking. I've gotten into that. I'm a tap dancer, so I love going to tap class.
Nice.
It's really fun for me. I love to read. I like outdoors stuff, walking my dogs, things like that. So
So that's how you
anything
probably
that's
spend your
active.
week.
I really like activity. So
It
I'm
sounds
pretty
like
busy,
it
so
because none
that
of
should
those
be one of my
was
words.
Active.
active. 4 words
Yeah,
to describe
that
yourself.
should have been one of my words. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could take out one of those other words. And
Well,
put
I
in
did
active.
notice that none of those things that you said involved like, taking naps.
No, I
sitting
hate
around.
naps. I hate sleeping. I really do. I hate naps and I hate sleeping.
Yeah, if you could
I've always said that if I didn't have to sleep, I wouldn't. It's
you
really
get so
weird,
much
but-
more done, right?
Exactly.
You
I'm
could
always
add
wanting
on
to get
4
something
more
done.
projects, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I love to multitask. That's one of my favorite things to do.
Okay, if you could sit down and talk to anyone, dead or alive, who would you choose?
Oh, wow. Just one person?
Oh, I don't know. You can pick 4 if you want. Just
Okay.
Just
I'm
who
gonna
comes to mind,
say-
because I'm sure there's a lot of people you'd love to
I'm
talk
going to
to.
say Sylvester Stallone because
Yeah,
I
of
love
course.
him and I love Rocky.
Yep.
I'm going to say Cher because I'm a
yeah.
big Cher fan.
Yeah.
I'm going to say...
I loved her in Moonstruck.
Yeah, I love
that was
her.
a great movie.
Mhm.
I'd love to talk to Jesus. That would be super amazing.
Sure would, yeah.
I don't know. That's 3.
That's
I'd
3,
say
and those
those
are
3.
the-
That would be my dinner party. I think I'd have.
Oh my
Sylvester
gosh, can you
Stallone,
imagine
Cher,
that dinner
and
party?
Jesus Christ.
Oh my God.
I don't know if Cher and Jesus would get along, but
I don't know.
but that might be interesting because I really do like conflict. So it'd be kind of fun.
Well, yeah, that would be
Jesus
interesting.
loves everybody. Don't forget.
I want to go to that
Right,
dinner party.
exactly.
Yeah.
How do I get an
Yeah.
invite?
Yeah. We want to be included in on that
right.
one. Yeah.
That's
Okay,
right.
favorite day of the week?
I think I love Wednesdays because I'm off on Wednesdays and that's the day I get all my things done. And it kind of feels like it's close to the weekend and it's a little bit far from the beginning of the week, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
I
nice
think
to have a
Wednesday.
midweek break.
I guess that's perfect. Favorite holiday?
Oh, Christmas. I'm one of those people like the Griswolds that want all the Christmas lights on their house. So I'm like Clark Griswold. My kids tease me. I love
Oh my
Christmas.
gosh, I love that show. That Christmas Vacation.
The more lights that you can have on your house, the better. And every year I'm trying to outdo myself.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh,
I love
well, you'll
Christmas.
have to take a picture and put it on your blog
right.
so we can all
you
see.
should. You should
Okay.
definitely post
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll see how I do this year.
that. All right. Anything that you love watching, a movie, TV show, something you binge watched, or just something you can recommend that you loved?
I loved Mrs. Maisel. That was something that I
The
watched
Marvelous
just recently.
Mrs. Maisel. Yeah,
That was really
great.
amazing.
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of the Ninja Warriors. Like I love competitions,
Yeah,
and I
love watching
accidentally
that too.
I accidentally started watching them one day, and now I'm like addicted to it. I just love the ninjas.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And then some of these people are amazing for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm really looking forward to watching Downton Abbey because now they're.
Oh, the
I've watched the
movie
whole.
or the
I've
series?
watched the whole series,
Oh,
but
me
now I
too.
want to see the movie. So
I do
that just
too.
came out.
Seems like a
I
lot of
know.
excitement for that
I haven't
one.
heard if it gets good reviews yet or not. I haven't even checked, but I definitely
Well,
want to
my
see
mom
it.
saw it and she said it was good. So
Yeah. Well,
That's all
For
the
what that-
review
for
you
what
need.
it's worth.
for what it's worth.
Rush out
Well,
and
it's
see it,
your mom's
everyone.
review.
Julie's mom says it's fantastic.
That's right. There
yeah,
you
my
go.
mom said it's great. So just go see it because of my mom.
Okay. This is kind of funny that I have this question on my list after you'll see why in a minute. How
Okay.
many hours of sleep do you need a night?
Oh, well, I can get away with 5 and feel pretty good.
Okay.
Usually 6 is like the sweet spot. I do not like to sleep, but I
Right.
have to. If I get less than 5, I'm pretty ugly. So
Right,
I try
yeah,
not to
right.
do that to my team.
6 is pretty stingy.
Six
is
so I
good.
think that's I
Yeah.
think you're doing well.
Yeah.
with
Like
6.
midnight, usually midnight to like 5:30 or 6. are
Wow,
kinda like
that is a
sleeping times.
short
And
night,
sometimes
yeah.
I push it past midnight because I'm a night owl, but that's
Wow.
about.
Do you
how
need
I
an
like to do
alarm
it.
to get up or do you just wake
Oh
up?
yeah. Oh
Okay.
yeah, I set multiple alarms.
Oh,
When I was
yeah.
in college, I had to put my alarm on the other side of the room because I
Oh,
would
yeah.
snooze it so many times.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That
yeah.
So yeah, I'm not a good morning person, but
No,
I
that's all
don't
right.
really like to sleep.
Yeah. All right. Paper book or ebook?
I like paper books. I'm kind of
Mhm.
old school. I still do read ebooks, but
Yeah.
I have a stack of paper books next to where I drink my coffee. And I'm kind of one of those people that'll read part of a book and set it down and then start reading another part of a book, which drives everybody crazy.
My
but
husband does
I
that.
usually have 3 or 4 going. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was sitting all over the house. See, that's the scattered.
It's a 7.
Sorry,
Yep,
I'm
a
calling you
7.
out.
I know.
Don't
And
worry,
I'm
we
an
all have the negative
ENFJ,
traits.
So if anybody's into Myers-Briggs, I'm an ENFJ. And I think they're a little scattered too.
Oh, that's interesting. I came out as an INFJ.
That's what my daughter is.
Oh,
my daughter's
interesting.
an INFJ. Yeah, Bridget.
I think I'm a ENFP. Is that right? Is that a letter?
Probably.
A fourth letter?
Are you pretty outgoing? And
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
that's how I
right.
came out.
Yeah.
You never know with these things. Okay. Would you rather pick up the phone or send an email?
I think phone.
Yeah.
Sometimes with clients, I like email because then I don't get stuck on the phone for as long. But
Right.
I don't know. I feel like talking, you can understand people better. I don't think there's as many areas of confusion or conflict.
Correct. Right. You lose a lot in an email or a text. And
Plus,
people,
I'm older, they
Yeah.
didn't have texting when I was in college, so we had to use the
in
phone.
some ways.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes that whole
Nobody had a
internet
camera
thing-
every second. Thank goodness.
right, and that social media is hard on people. I think
Oh my
sometimes.
gosh.
I think
That's
so,
a whole
too.
nother podcast
Yeah.
that we can
Yeah.
do right now.
We'll have to have you back to discuss that one.
Yeah,
Maybe
we'll
you
just
can be
discuss
guests on
social
my
media.
podcast.
Yeah, right. And we'll
you can
talk
come
about
on mine
some-
and we can talk about this. Yeah,
We would
that's a
love
good idea.
to be your guest.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Last one. Someplace you have visited that you just loved.
Well,
Meg and I are always saying we ask these questions so we're generating a list over here. Like
It's
what movie to
very
watch, what book
self-serving.
to read.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I really love New York City, even though I would hate to live there. But my son just moved there this past winter, and so I got a little bit better, kind of on the ground level idea of what it's like to live there. And it's a difficult place to live, but I just love visiting that
There's a lot of
place.
energy.
There's something about it.
Yeah.
It's the energy.
It's a
and,
great city. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't always love what I see there because sometimes you see some sad things, but
Sure.
but I do really love New York. I love going to Florida in the winter because Michigan kind of sucks in the winter. So.
Oh, well, Maine kind of does too. So
Oh,
we
no.
can
But you
relate.
know
It's
what?
just beautiful
Speaking
here
of-
in the winter.
Speaking of where the place that I really love is Maine. I love.
Oh, no.
All right.
My sister used to live in York, Maine.
Yes, that's
and
not far
I
from
Right next
love.
door.
I was
Yeah.
just there this past summer for a week with my sister and her husband because they came back to visit. But I love York in the
Yeah.
summer. It's amazing.
It's
I love the
beautiful.
ocean.
If
Yeah,
you
that's
come
one of
up
my
next
favorite
summer,
places.
That's when we should do our podcast together. We could
That's
just
right.
sit down and chat. It would be
Absolutely.
great.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
are
What
right
city
next
are
to
you in?
Newark. Meg's in Kennebunkport, which
Oh,
is,
yeah, that's real close.
and I'm basically in Ogunquit, which is just
Yeah. Yep.
So
I know where that is.
We're surrounded.
Yeah, my sister lived in York for years, so we used to come there a lot. So I love Maine.
Yeah,
It's one
All
of my
right.
favorite places. Only in the summer, though, not in the
Oh,
winter. I'm not
gosh.
coming in the winter.
No, you're not. Of course not.
Michigan's bad. Michigan's bad enough.
You're gonna go from one cold place to another.
Yeah, I'll go to Florida.
There you go. There you go.
Or Texas. I like Texas, too.
All right.
Yeah, Julie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it. I was a little nervous. I thought, uh-oh, but I'm having a good time. So.
Oh, we're so glad you did. You did a wonderful job.
Yes, for sure. And anyone out there considering a field in veterinary science or becoming a veterinarian, or anyone that is possibly struggling in this career and could use some really good advice, you're definitely going to want to check out Julie Cappel's blog, podcast, website, and even schedule an appointment with her to get some one-on-one advice.
I hope so. I love this profession, so I hope people out there that are thinking about it will really consider it because it's really a great job. It's been great to me.
Well, that love for your career definitely came through in this podcast today.
Thanks.
We had a lot of fun, Julie. Thanks a lot.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Take care.
Bye.
What a wonderful guest Julie was. I felt so relaxed chatting with her.
Yeah, she's so easygoing and such an informative guest for any listener thinking about veterinary school or looking for a mentor.
For sure.
It would be fun someday to get her and her daughter Bridget back on to chat about the Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, and the personality profiling.
Yes, they are definitely knowledgeable in that area.
Yeah, I'm thinking especially Bridget. She's just right on top of that stuff.
For sure.
And it would be a blast to do. But in the meantime, anyone interested in listening to Dr. Cappel's podcast episodes that she does with her daughter, where they discuss some personality assessments in detail, we will provide the link in our show notes that will get to those podcast episodes.
We sure will. They're really fantastic. I highly recommend you check them out.
Yeah, definitely.
And I also highly recommend subscribing to our podcast. It only takes a couple of seconds and it really, really helps our podcast to grow. And it also helps others to find it.
Yes, it does. So please just take a couple of seconds to do that. We would so appreciate it. You could even throw us a nice review if you want. That would be really, really nice.
We would definitely appreciate that. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening today.
Yes, thank you, everybody, and have a great day.